Hello and welcome. My name's Campbell. This is Spiral Up channel. Thank you for joining me. And today I thought we would have a little bit of a chat about our story and who the real author is. So let's get into it. Okay, so your story, my story, our story, his story, the miss story. You have all these words about stories. And of course, I talk a lot about his story, which is someone else's version of what reality is down here in this realm we find ourselves in. That's his story, right? Someone else. And that just means someone else. Doesn't mean they have to be a man, by the way. And then people started saying, well, what about her story? Great, that's just another story from another perspective. What about our story? Well, that's our collective story. And all of these stories, they're all coming from the outside. And of course, we can connect with them, we can be part of them, but ultimately, that's not our story. Your story is probably my story, the mystery, right? The mystery, which means we don't know where it's going. It hasn't been written yet. Okay, so we need to write our story. And of course, this word write, W-R-I-T-E, to write. Write, R-I-G-H-T. We need to write it right. If it's a bad story, then maybe we need to write it, right? We need to make it more correct. We need to make it more of us, because the only time that our stories, go bad really is when they're not ours, when we're taking outside information and trying to integrate that into our story, because ultimately we are the authors. We are the authors of our story. But so often we give over authorship to authority, authority. Okay, this is what authority is. They are the authors trying to take over your story and my story. Okay, and this is why we have found ourselves in this situation. And I've talked about this a lot and called it the overlay. And that's what it is. It's all this propaganda, all this information that we get hammered at us, right? Shot at us. And the ultimate goal of that is so that they can write your story. Okay, so that they can be the authors of your story. Now, when that happens, no good can come from that, because we are not them. We haven't lived their experiences. We don't think like them. We don't make the same decisions. So therefore, someone else's story cannot work for you, even if it's worked perfectly for them. But do keep in mind that most people's stories don't work very well for them, and then they go around telling other people that their stories should be more like theirs, which aren't good stories, haven't got them to a good place. And we also have this other word, rite, R-I-T-E, the rites, the rite of passage. Like sacred rites. A rite is a ritual. That's rite and ritual. It's the same word. So when you write, W-R-I-T-E, your story, write, R-I-G-H-T, write for you, then you get the chance to participate in rites, R-I-T-E, rituals. These are rites of passage. So, if you want the right to participate in the correct rites, then you need to be your own author. We've all heard about the rites, the rituals that these authority people participate in. So therefore, if they become the author of your story, their rights become part of your story. And again, this is ultimately their goal, is to change us into them, or at least into a version of us that they can control, right? This is right. So this is it. So the main message I want to get across here is understand that your story is right for you. It's correct for you. That does not mean that it's correct for anyone else. In fact, I would say that your story can't be correct for anyone else, because no one else has lived your life. So trust trust that you know the right passage to take, the right story to write. And as soon as that starts coming from within, and we don't have these voices of other, authors, authority coming in and affecting our story, then we really start to write it, right? We get it on the right track. RIGHT. But as soon as authority comes in, that's no longer our story, so it cannot benefit us. So who's writing your story? Is it really you? Are you writing your story? Or is it someone else? Have you given over authorship to someone else? Because we're taking in all these opinions. And the thing about these opinions and authority is they're never really good, happy, expansive thoughts that we're given, right, for our stories. They're always, you need to do this, you need to conform, you're not good enough, you're this. And all these things are why you're going to fail unless you join our story, right? Join authority, join the collective story, right? The collective mind, the hive mind, where everyone does the same things. They get to the end, and if everyone does the same things, they all get the same experience. And we know people work their whole lives in the system for authority. They get to the end and they realize they've written the wrong book and they're not happy, and they wish that they would go back. And to do with that, wishing to go back, we've all done stupid things, dumb things, made dumb decisions. We've, probably done things that we're not very proud of, made bad decisions and acted in bad ways. That's all part of a story. The best stories are when, the hero, the main character, goes through trials and tribulations, and through that they learn and they get better, right? Because there are no mistakes. There's only mistakes, right? And if it's a mistake, you get to take 2 and 3 and 4. So to do with your past books and your past stories, if they're not empowering you, then understand that that's a lesson. Try and get the lesson from it, but don't worry over it. An author, a professional writer who writes books, for money and all this, and all these series of books we have, if they write a bad one, they either change it or they discard it. They don't spend time worrying about how they went wrong, but they understand where they went wrong and that they need to write it, RIGHT, right? So this is the thing. Your story needs to come from within. Don't let other people edit your story. Don't let them edit you. Okay, we've seen a lot of editing in the last couple of years to do with platforms like the one I'm currently on, right? And authority editing out people's parts of the collective story, right? We call it censorship, right? So that's literally the authority who want to be the author of your story saying, no, you can't put that in your story. You can't add that to the collective story because we want to be the authors. We ultimately want to create this story, this book. And if they do that, guess what? They create the outcome. They create our experience. And the Never-Ending Story, that movie from the 80s, in that story, the stories were disappearing. And when the stories disappeared, the great nothingness came and started eating everything and taking over and turning it into nothing because there were no new stories to push this experience on. And at the end of that movie, the hero realizes that the only way to change things is to write a new story. The only way to keep experiences going forward and into better experiences is to keep writing the story. So that's what I wanted to say. Write a story, write a good story, write a good book, write many of them. Just make sure that you're the author. Okay, and then once you do that, you can share your story. And the best way, of course, to share it is just through actions. Live your story, be the hero, be the main character on the hero's journey, on the quest, because you have better questions, because you've written a better story. So I hope that made some sense and you got something from that. Thank you for listening and spending some time with me. Please do give me a like, subscribe, leave me a comment, and share this around, this content, if you think it will be helpful for other people. And most of all, be the author of your own story and stay awesome. And I'll talk to you all on the next upload. Bye for now.